The tow truck's cable was 3 feet from the rusted frame when the old woman's voice cut through the crowd like a blade. "Stop! Don't touch that car!" 30 wealthy collectors froze. CEO Scarlett Vaughn's perfectly composed face went pale, and 7-year-old Lily Cole, tears still wet on her cheeks, looked up from her father's arms as the legendary Victoria Bennett pushed through the crowd toward the vehicle everyone had been laughing at for the past 20 minutes. Do you people have any idea what you're about to destroy? Before you hear how we got here, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. The morning started the way every Saturday morning started for Ethan Cole. Burnt toast, weak coffee, and his daughter Lily sitting at their kitchen table with marker stains on her fingers and a drawing she'd been working on since Thursday. "It's a horse," she said, not looking up. "I can see that." Ethan scraped the blackened edges off the bread over the sink. "Why's it got 3 legs?" "It's not done yet." "Right, sorry." The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that hadn't been updated since the early 2000s. The kind of place where the landlord's idea of fixing the heat was telling you to wear a sweater. But it was theirs. Had been for 5 years now, ever since Sarah died and left Ethan to figure out how to be both parents at once. He wasn't great at it. He tried. But there were days when trying felt like pushing a broken car uphill with no brakes and no destination. "Dad, you're burning the new toast." "Damn it!" He yanked the plug. Smoke curled toward the ceiling detector, which had stopped working months ago. He made a mental note to fix it, knowing he'd forget by Monday. Lily finally looked up. "Are we going to the auction today?" "That's the plan." "Can I bring Howard?" Howard was the stuffed horse she'd had since she was 2. One eye missing, the left ear barely hanging on, stuffing coming out of a tear in the belly that Ethan had tried to sew shut 3 times now. "Howard can come," Ethan said, "but he stays in the truck." "Deal." The Riverside County Farm liquidation auction wasn't the kind of event that drew crowds. It was April, overcast, threatening rain, and the farm in question had been abandoned for 8 years before the bank finally decided to unload everything. Rusted equipment, broken furniture, a barn full of junk that nobody wanted and everybody knew it. Ethan pulled his truck into the dirt lot at 9:15. There were maybe a dozen other vehicles scattered around, mostly other mechanics looking for spare parts, a couple of antique dealers hoping to find furniture they could refinish and flip, and one guy in a suit who looked lost. "Stay close," Ethan told Lily as they climbed out. She had Howard tucked under one arm. "I always do." The auctioneer was a thick-necked man named Bert, who'd been doing county liquidations for 30 years and had the voice to prove it. Gravelly, loud, impatient. He stood on the flatbed of a truck with a clipboard and a microphone that barely worked. "Lot 47, Bert announced. "Miscellaneous tools, wrenches, sockets. Some of it's garbage, some of it might work." "Do I hear 20? 20, someone called. 25. 30. Ethan wasn't interested in tools. He had enough of those. He was interested in the back corner of the barn, where he'd spotted something during his walkthrough that morning. A tarp-covered shape that nobody else had bothered to look under. Most people saw a pile of junk. Ethan saw a frame. He'd pulled back just enough of the tarp to glimpse the chassis number stamped near the wheel well. CSX 3015. He didn't have the reference guide memorized, but he knew Shelby numbers when he saw them. And if he was right, if the rust and corrosion and decades of neglect hadn't completely eaten through the identification, then what sat under that tarp wasn't junk. It was history. "Lot 61, Bert called. "Vehicle, condition unknown, sold as is, no title verification, basically a parts car if you're being generous. Anybody interested?" Silence. Someone in the back laughed. "That thing's been rotting there since the 80s, Bert. It's scrap." "Yeah, well, scrap's still worth something. Do I hear $50? More silence. Ethan raised his hand. 50. Bert squinted at him. "You serious?" 50, Ethan repeated. "All right, 50 going once." 75, a voice called. Ethan turned. It was the guy in the suit, grinning like he'd just won something. Ethan didn't hesitate. 100. The suit guy frowned, looked at the tarp-covered wreck, then shook his head. "Not worth it." 100 going once, twice, sold to the guy with the kid. Lily tugged Ethan's sleeve. "What'd you buy, Dad?" "Something nobody else wanted," Ethan said quietly. "Is it treasure?" He looked down at her, at those wide brown eyes that still thought the world made sense. Maybe. It took 2 hours and a flatbed tow service to get the car back to Ethan's garage. The owner of the tow company, a guy named Ricky, who Ethan had gone to high school with, took one look at the rusted heap and whistled low. "You paying me to haul garbage now? Just get it to the shop," Ethan said. "Your funeral." The garage was a small independent operation on the east side of town. 2 bays, decent equipment, a waiting room with chairs that didn't match, and magazines from 2019. Ethan rented the space month to month from a landlord who didn't ask questions as long as the checks cleared. By the time they got the car inside, it was nearly 3 in the afternoon. Lily sat on a stool in the corner, swinging her legs and watching as Ethan carefully pulled the tarp away. The rust was worse than he'd thought. Surface corrosion covered nearly every panel. The paint, what little remained, was sun-faded and peeling. The interior was gutted. No seats, no dash, no steering wheel, just a hollow shell that looked like it had been picked clean by scavengers. But the frame was solid, and the numbers were real. Ethan ran his fingers along the chassis stamp, feeling the edges of the etched metal beneath years of grime. CSX 3015. He pulled out his phone, searched the registry database he'd bookmarked years ago. The page loaded slowly. Then the details came up. 1965 Shelby Cobra, 427S/C. One of fewer than 200 ever built. Original owner unknown. Last recorded sale, 1979. Status, missing. Ethan's heart kicked hard against his ribs. "Dad?" Lily's voice cut through the silence. "Is it treasure?" He looked at her, then back at the car. "Yeah, kiddo, I think it is." "Are we rich now?" He laughed, short, dry. "Not yet. This thing needs a lot of work. Can I help? You can hand me tools." "Deal." And tip. For the next 3 weeks, Ethan worked on the Cobra every night after closing the shop. He didn't tell anyone what it was. Not Ricky. Not the guys he played poker with on Thursdays. Not even his older brother Marcus, who would have told him to sell it immediately and pay off the medical bills still sitting in collections from Sarah's final hospital stay. This wasn't about money. Not really. It was about the work. About taking something broken and forgotten and making it whole again. About proving, to himself maybe, or to Lily, or to nobody at all, that things didn't have to stay ruined forever. Lily helped when she could, handing him wrenches, organizing bolts, sitting on the creeper beside him while he inspected the undercarriage. Sometimes she drew. Sometimes she asked questions. Sometimes she just sat there, quiet, Howard tucked under her arm. "Why do you like old cars?" she asked one night. Ethan slid out from under the frame, wiping grease off his hands. "Because they were built to last. People cared back then. Every part meant something." "Do you think Mom would have liked this car?" The question landed hard. Ethan paused, looking at the rusted shell, then at Lily. "Yeah, I think she would have." "Because it's treasure?" "Because I found it." Lily seemed to accept that. She went back to her drawing, a new one this time, a car with 4 wheels and a stick figure girl standing beside it. The Vaughn Motors Charity Showcase was the kind of event Ethan would normally avoid. Black-tie dress code, luxury vehicles on display, champagne fountains and silent auctions, and people who measured their worth in horsepower and leather interiors. But the gig paid $300 for the day. Basic mechanic support, making sure none of the showcase vehicles had issues, helping with setup and teardown. And $300 was $300. Ethan didn't plan to bring the Cobra. It was still weeks away from being road-ready, still buried under rust and missing half its components. But the morning of the event, Lily had asked if she could see it one more time before he left for the day, and something about the way she looked at it, proud, protective, made him change his mind. He loaded it onto the flatbed trailer, covered it with a tarp, and drove to the showcase venue with Lily beside him and Howard on her lap. The Vaughn estate was absurd. 20 acres of manicured lawns, a main house that looked like it had been airlifted from a European postcard, and a private car museum that could have doubled as an art gallery. The showcase was being held in the East Plaza, a massive stone courtyard surrounded by fountains and sculptures and enough string lights to be seen from space. Ethan parked in the service area behind the main display. He told Lily to stay near the truck, keep out of the way, and not touch anything expensive. Can I look at the cars? She asked. From a distance. Deal. The showcase vehicles started arriving around noon. A 1961 Ferrari 250 GT, a McLaren P1, a Bugatti Veyron in chrome blue, each one worth more than Ethan would make in 5 lifetimes. Each one followed by photographers, handlers, and owners who looked like they'd never pumped their own gas. Ethan worked quietly, checking fluid levels, making sure batteries were charged, tightening anything that looked loose. He kept his head down, did his job, tried not to think about the Cobra sitting under a tarp 50 feet away. Then Scarlett Vaughn arrived. She was 30, maybe 31. Tall, sharp-featured, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Ethan's truck. Her hair was pulled back tight, her heels clicked against the stone like gunshots, and she moved through the plaza like she owned it, which, technically, she did. Vaughn Motors was one of the largest luxury car dealerships on the West Coast. Scarlett had taken over as CEO 3 years earlier after her father's retirement, and by all accounts, she doubled the company's revenue and tripled its reputation. She was smart, ruthless, and completely uninterested in anything that didn't serve her brand. Ethan had seen her once before, at a charity gala he'd worked 2 years ago. She hadn't noticed him then. She didn't notice him now, at least not until she saw the Cobra. It happened fast. Scarlett was doing a walkthrough of the plaza, checking sight lines, making sure every showcase vehicle was positioned perfectly for the photographers. She stopped near the service area, frowned, and turned toward Ethan's truck. "What is that?" she said, pointing at the tarp-covered trailer. Ethan looked up from the McLaren's engine bay. "My car." "Your car," she repeated slowly. "Yeah." She walked closer, heels clicking, eyes narrowed. "Why is it here?" "It came with me." "This is a luxury auto showcase, not a junkyard." Ethan straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. "I'm working the event. The car's staying in the service area. It's not bothering anyone." Scarlett stared at him like he'd just suggested setting the plaza on fire. "Do you have any idea what this event represents?" "Rich people looking at expensive cars." Her expression went cold. "This event raises $500,000 annually for children's hospitals. Every detail matters. Every vehicle on this property is part of a carefully curated experience. And you," she gestured at the tarp, "you bring this." "It's under a tarp," Ethan said evenly. "Nobody can even see it." "I can see it." "Then stop looking." The words came out sharper than he'd intended. Scarlett's eyes flashed. She opened her mouth to respond, then noticed Lily standing near the truck, clutching Howard, watching the whole exchange with wide, worried eyes. "Is that your daughter?" Scarlett asked. "Yeah." "Does she know you're about to lose this job?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "I haven't done anything wrong. You brought an eyesore to a luxury showcase. That's wrong." She turned toward one of the event coordinators hovering nearby. "Get this vehicle off the property, now." "Wait," Ethan started. "I don't wait," Scarlett said. "I make decisions, and my decision is that this," she pointed at the Cobra again, "doesn't belong here." Lily stepped forward, her voice small but steady. "It's not an eyesore." Scarlett looked down at her, surprised. "Excuse me? My dad found it. He's fixing it. It's special." "Sweetheart," Scarlett said, her tone softening slightly. "I'm sure it's special to you, but this is a professional event. We have standards." "It's a Shelby," Ethan said quietly. Scarlett blinked. "What?" "The car. It's a 1965 Shelby Cobra 427. Original frame, authentic chassis number." For a moment, Scarlett just stared at him. Then she laughed, short, disbelieving. "You expect me to believe that pile of rust is a Shelby Cobra?" "I don't expect you to believe anything," Ethan said. "But it is." "Then why does it look like it belongs in a scrap heap?" "Because nobody took care of it. Until now." Scarlett shook her head slowly, her smile sharp and humorless. "You're serious?" "Yeah." "You actually think—" She stopped, looking at the tarp again, then back at Ethan. "Do you have documentation, registration, any proof at all?" "The chassis number stamped on the frame." "Of course it is." Her voice dripped with sarcasm. "And I suppose you're planning to restore this authentic Shelby in your garage between oil changes?" "That's the plan." "How inspiring." She turned to the coordinator again. Call a tow truck. I want this removed within the hour. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Please don't. Scarlett hesitated just for a second. Then her expression hardened. I'm sorry, sweetheart, but your father should have thought about this before bringing junk to my event. It's not junk! Lily's voice broke. It's treasure! The word hung in the air. Desperate, childish, true. Scarlett looked uncomfortable now, but she didn't back down. The truck's been called. If you want to keep your job for the rest of the day, I suggest you move your vehicle to the employee lot and leave the, she gestured vaguely at the Cobra, the treasure for the professionals to handle. Ethan's hands curled into fists, not from anger, from the specific crushing frustration of knowing he was right and having absolutely no way to prove it that would matter to someone like her. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. No, Scarlett replied. You made the mistake. I'm fixing it. She walked away, heels clicking, back straight, completely confident that she'd just solved a problem. Lily looked up at Ethan, tears spilling over now. Dad? It's okay, he said, even though it wasn't. We'll figure it out. But he didn't know how. The tow truck arrived 30 minutes later, a flatbed hauler with a driver who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. A small crowd had started to gather near the service area, drawn by the commotion. Guests in tailored suits and cocktail dresses, photographers with cameras ready, a few collectors who'd heard the word Shelby and wanted to see what the fuss was about. Scarlett stood near the plaza entrance, arms crossed, watching like a supervisor, making sure a problem got handled correctly. The driver hopped out of the truck, clipboard in hand. Somebody call for a removal? That one, Scarlett pointed at the Cobra. The driver walked over, lifted the edge of the tarp, and let out a low whistle. Damn, that's rough. It's garbage, Scarlett said. Load it up. You want me to take it to the yard? I want it gone. Ethan stepped forward. You can't just take my car. The driver looked between them, confused. Who's paying for this? I am, Scarlett said, as compensation for the inconvenience. You don't get to decide that, Ethan said, his voice harder now. Actually, I do. This is my property. Your vehicle is in violation of the event agreement you signed when you accepted this job. Section 12, subsection C, no personal property on site without prior approval. Ethan stared at her. You're seriously doing this? I'm seriously protecting my event's reputation. By stealing my car? By removing a liability. She nodded to the driver. Load it. Lily's voice cut through the tension, sharp and breaking. No, don't! She ran toward the Cobra, Howard clutched tight, tears streaming down her face. Ethan caught her before she reached the trailer, pulling her back gently. Lily, stop. They can't take it. She was sobbing now, the kind of full-body crying that kids do when the world stops making sense. Dad, don't let them. The crowd had grown larger. Phones were out now, recording. Ethan could see the exact moment Scarlett realized this wasn't just a logistical problem anymore. It was a PR disaster in progress. A little girl crying while a CEO ordered her father's car towed. It didn't matter what the car actually was. The optics were brutal. Miss Vaughn, one of the coordinators, said quietly, stepping close. Maybe we should... No, Scarlett said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. The car goes. The driver hooked the cable to the Cobra's frame. The winch started pulling, metal scraping against metal, rust flaking off in chunks. Ethan held Lily tight, feeling her shake against him. He wanted to say something, anything, that would make this better. But there was nothing. And then a voice cut through the noise like a knife through silk. Stop! Don't touch that car! Everyone froze. An older woman pushed through the crowd, late 60s, maybe early 70s, silver hair pulled into a bun, wearing slacks and a blazer that had seen better days. She moved with the kind of authority that didn't need volume, the kind that came from 50 years of knowing exactly what she was talking about. Ethan recognized her immediately. Victoria Bennett, legendary car historian, author of 3 books on American muscle cars, the woman who'd authenticated more classic vehicles than anyone alive. She walked straight to the Cobra, ignoring Scarlett, ignoring the driver, ignoring everyone. She knelt beside the frame, pulled a flashlight from her jacket pocket, and inspected the chassis number with the focus of a surgeon. The plaza went silent. After what felt like an hour, but was probably 30 seconds, Victoria stood up slowly. She looked at Scarlett, then at Ethan, then at the crowd. "Do you people," she said quietly, "have any idea what you're about to destroy?" Scarlett's face had gone pale. "Miss Bennett, I didn't know you were—" "CSX 3015, Victoria said, cutting her off. "Original frame, authentic stamps. This is a 1965 Shelby Cobra 427S/C, one of the rarest American cars ever built." She turned to Scarlett, her expression hard. "And you were about to tow it to a scrapyard." The crowd erupted. Gasps, murmurs, cameras flashing, collectors pushing forward to get a better look. Scarlett opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. That's impossible. Look at it." "I am looking at it," Victoria said, "and I'm telling you it's real." "But it's covered in rust?" "Yes." "Gutted?" "Yes." "Neglected for 40 years?" "Absolutely." Victoria's voice sharpened. "But the frame doesn't lie. The numbers don't lie. This car is worth more than $3 million after restoration." The silence that followed was deafening. Scarlett stared at the Cobra like it had just grown teeth. Ethan felt Lily stop shaking in his arms. The driver dropped the cable and stepped back, hands raised like he wanted no part of whatever came next. Victoria turned to Ethan. "Who found this?" "I did," Ethan said quietly. "Where?" "County auction. Farm liquidation." "How much?" $120. Victoria smiled, small, approving. "And you recognize the chassis number?" "Yeah." "Good eye." She looked back at the crowd, at Scarlett, at the phone still recording everything. "This man just made the find of the decade, and you," she pointed at Scarlett, "you almost destroyed it because you couldn't see past the rust." Scarlett's face had gone from pale to red. "I didn't." "You did," Victoria said simply. "Own it." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Ethan could see the exact moment Scarlett understood what had just happened. Not just the mistake, not just the missed value, but the viral video that was already being uploaded, shared, captioned. CEO tries to tow mechanic's $1 million car while his daughter begs her to stop. The kind of story that didn't need context to spread, the kind that destroyed reputations in hours. Scarlett looked at Ethan, at Lily, at the Cobra. I didn't know." "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. "You didn't ask, either." The words landed like a slap. Scarlett flinched but didn't respond. Around them, the showcase continued, guests drifting back toward the luxury vehicles, photographers still snapping pictures, the tow truck driver quietly unhooking the cable and backing away. But the damage was done. Victoria put a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You planning to restore this?" "That's the plan." "Good. I know people. I'll get you a contact list. Best Shelby experts in the country." She glanced at Lily, who was still clutching Howard but had stopped crying. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lily." "You helped your dad find this treasure." Lily nodded, sniffling. "Then you're part of history now," Victoria said gently. "Don't forget that." She turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd as quickly as she'd appeared. Ethan stood there, still holding Lily, still processing what had just happened. The Cobra sat behind him, rusted, broken, worth millions. But in that moment, all he could think about was the look on his daughter's face when Scarlett had ordered it towed. That was the part that mattered. Not the money, not the recognition. The fact that Lily had believed in the treasure even when nobody else did. Scarlett approached slowly, her earlier confidence completely gone. "Mr. Cole." Ethan. She swallowed hard. "I owe you an apology." "You owe my daughter an apology," Ethan said quietly. Scarlett looked at Lily, then crouched down to her level. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. Your dad's car is very special, and you were right to protect it." Lily stared at her for a long moment. Then, in that blunt way only 7-year-olds can manage, she said, "You were mean." "I was," Scarlett admitted, "and I'm sorry." Lily seemed to consider this. Finally, she said, "Okay." Scarlett stood up, looking at Ethan again. "If there's anything I can do—" "There's not," Ethan said. "We're good. I'd like to help with the restoration, funding, contacts, whatever you need." I appreciate that, but I've got it covered. Are you sure? Yeah. He looked at the cobra, then back at her. This isn't about money. It's about the work. Scarlett nodded slowly, understanding or pretending to. Well, if you change your mind, I won't. She left without another word, heels clicking away across the stone plaza. Ethan loaded Lily into the truck. The Cobra stayed on the trailer, tarp pulled back now, fully visible to anyone who cared to look. Collectors were still circling it, taking pictures, murmuring about frame numbers and restoration costs. But Ethan didn't care about any of that. He climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled out of the plaza slowly, carefully, the flatbed trailer rolling behind him. Lily was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Dad?" "Yeah, kiddo?" "Are we really rich now?" Ethan smiled. "Not yet. Still gotta fix it first." "Will it take a long time?" "Probably." "Can I still help?" "Always." She settled back into her seat, Howard tucked under her arm, and closed her eyes. Behind them, the Vaughn Motors Charity Showcase continued. Luxury cars gleamed under string lights. Champagne flowed. Photographers captured perfect moments for glossy magazines. But the story everyone would remember, the one that would spread across social media, get picked up by local news, turn into a feel-good viral moment, wasn't about the Ferraris or the Bugattis. It was about the mechanic who saw treasure in rust, and the little girl who believed him. The drive home should have felt like victory. It didn't. Ethan kept both hands on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road, hyper-aware of the flatbed trailer behind him carrying $3 million in rusted metal. Every pothole felt like a threat. Every semi-truck that passed felt too close. The Cobra wasn't insured for what it was actually worth. Hell, it wasn't insured at all beyond basic liability. If someone rear-ended him right now, if a tire blew, if anything went wrong, that was it. Game over. Lily had fallen asleep 20 minutes into the drive, her head pressed against the window, Howard clutched to her chest. The streaks from her tears had dried on her cheeks, leaving faint salt lines that caught the late afternoon light. Ethan's phone buzzed in the cup holder. Then again. Then 6 more times in rapid succession. He ignored it. By the time they pulled into the garage lot, the sun was starting to dip below the buildings, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. Ethan backed the trailer into the bay carefully, cut the engine, and sat there for a moment in the sudden silence. His phone buzzed again. He picked it up. 43 text messages, 17 missed calls. His inbox was flooded with notifications from people he hadn't talked to in years, friends from high school, distant cousins, his ex-girlfriend from community college, who he hadn't spoken to since 2015. The first text was from Ricky. "Dude, are you famous now?" The second was from Marcus. "Call me. Now." The third was from a number he didn't recognize. "Hi. I'm a producer for Channel 7 News, and we'd love to interview you about your incredible find." Ethan turned the phone off and slipped it into his pocket. He climbed out of the truck, walked around to the passenger side, and opened the door carefully. Lily stirred, but didn't wake. He unbuckled her seatbelt, scooped her up. She was getting too big for this, almost too heavy to carry comfortably, and brought her inside to the small office at the back of the garage. There was a couch there, old and stained, with springs that poked through the cushions if you sat wrong. He laid Lily down gently, tucked Howard beside her, and pulled a blanket over both of them. She mumbled something in her sleep. It sounded like treasure. Ethan stood there for a moment, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of the day settle onto his shoulders like wet concrete. Then he went back out to deal with the Cobra. The garage felt different now. Quieter, maybe. Or maybe it was just him, hearing the space differently, knowing what sat on that trailer. He'd worked on expensive cars before, luxury sedans, high-end sports cars, the occasional classic restoration job. But this was something else. This was the kind of vehicle museums fought over, the kind collectors spent decades searching for, the kind that changed hands in private auctions for amounts of money Ethan couldn't even conceptualize. And it was his. He unhooked the trailer, secured the Cobra inside the bay, and pulled the tarp back over it. Not because he was hiding it, because he didn't know what else to do. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. Still off. Phantom vibrations. He sat down on the creeper, leaned back against the wall, and closed his eyes. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear traffic, the hum of the city. The occasional siren. Normal sounds. The kind that reminded you the world kept moving whether you were ready or not. When he opened his eyes again, it was fully dark outside. The overhead fluorescents buzzed faintly. Lily was still asleep in the office. Ethan pulled out his phone and turned it back on. 91 messages now, 24 missed calls, 3 voicemails. He didn't listen to any of them. Instead, he opened his browser and searched Shelby Cobra, 427 Vaughn Motors. The results loaded instantly. The top article was from a local news site posted 2 hours ago. The headline read, Mechanic's $120 auction fine turns out to be $3 million Shelby Cobra. CEO left speechless. Below it, a video. Ethan clicked play. The footage was shaky, someone's phone camera, shot from the edge of the crowd. It showed Scarlett pointing at the Cobra, her voice sharp and dismissive. Then it cut to Lily crying, begging them not to take the car. Then Victoria Bennett pushing through the crowd, inspecting the frame, delivering her verdict. The video had been viewed 83,000 times. The comments section was a war zone. That CEO is awful. Who treats a kid like that? Imagine being so stuck up you can't recognize a Shelby Cobra LMAO. This dude is a legend. $120 to $3 million. That's the American dream right there. Feel bad for the little girl. She knew it was special, and nobody listened. Ethan scrolled further. More articles. More videos. Someone had pulled Scarlett's LinkedIn profile and was posting screenshots of her bio with captions like, "This you?" Another account had started a thread analyzing the Cobra's authenticity frame by frame. A car forum he'd lurked on for years had a 50-page discussion going about whether the find was legitimate or staged. His phone buzzed. Another call. This time from a 310 area code. He answered without thinking. Hello? Ethan Cole? The voice was male, smooth, vaguely West Coast. My name is Trevor Hastings. I'm a collector and investor specializing in classic American muscle cars. I saw the news about your Shelby and I'd love to talk to you about a potential purchase. It's not for sale. I understand, but if you just hear my offer, not interested. Ethan hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. He turned it off again. In the office, Lily stirred. Ethan heard the couch springs creak, then her small voice calling out, Dad? Right here, kiddo. She appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, Howard dangling from one hand. Are we home? We're at the shop. You fell asleep. What time is it? Late. You hungry? She nodded. They ordered pizza from the place 2 blocks over. Pepperoni for her, plain cheese for him because his stomach had been a knot since the moment Victoria Bennett said the words, $3 million. While they waited, Lily sat on the floor of the garage and drew with markers on the back of an old invoice sheet. What are you making? Ethan asked. The car, when it's fixed. He looked over her shoulder. She'd drawn the Cobra in profile, bright red with exaggerated wheels and a stick figure version of herself standing beside it, arms raised in triumph. Looks good, he said. Do you think it'll really be red? Could be. We'll see what's under the rust. I hope it's red. She added another detail, a sun in the corner, smiling. Dad? Yeah? Are people going to be mad at us now? The question caught him off guard. Why would they be mad? Because of the lady, the one who yelled. Ethan sat down beside her on the concrete floor. That wasn't your fault, Lily. None of it. But she was mad. She was embarrassed. That's different. What's the difference? He thought about it. When you're mad, you're upset at someone else. When you're embarrassed, you're upset at yourself. Lily considered this, then went back to her drawing. I think she was both. Yeah, probably. The pizza arrived 20 minutes later. They ate in the office with the door propped open, watching the Cobra through the gap like it might disappear if they looked away. Dad? Lily said through a mouthful of pepperoni. Don't talk with your mouth full. She swallowed. Are we going to be famous? No. But everyone's talking about the car. People talk. Then they stop talking. That's how it works. Do you want to be famous? Not even a little bit. Me neither. She took another bite, chewed thoughtfully. Howard doesn't either. Ethan smiled despite himself. Good to know Howard's on the same page. After they finished eating, Ethan called his brother. Marcus picked up on the first ring. Jesus Christ, finally. I've been trying to reach you all day. I know. Have you seen the videos? Some of them. This is insane, man. Do you know how many people are talking about this? I've had 3 people at work ask me if I'm related to you. My boss sent me the article. My boss, Ethan. Sorry. Don't apologize. This is incredible. You just made the find of the century. I bought a car at an auction. A $3 million car. It's not worth $3 million yet. It's worth scrap metal and potential. Marcus laughed, loud, disbelieving. You're really not excited about this, are you? I'm tired. Well, get untired because you need to think about what you're doing next. You selling? Restoring? What's the plan? Restoring. By yourself? That's the idea. Ethan, come on. Be realistic. You're talking about a year plus of work, tens of thousands in parts, specialized labor. I know what I'm talking about. Then you also know you can sell it right now, as is, for probably close to $1 million. Maybe more. You could pay off your debts, get Lily into a better school, move out of that apartment. I'm not selling it. There was a pause, then Marcus sighed. Why not? Because it's not about the money. Everything's about money, Ethan. Not this. Another pause, longer this time. Finally, Marcus said, You sound like Sarah. The words hit harder than they should have. Ethan's throat tightened. Yeah, maybe. Look, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but think about Lily. Think about what that money could do for her. I am thinking about her. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're holding on to a car for pride. It's not pride. Then what is it? Ethan looked through the office window at the Cobra, covered and silent. It's the work. It's showing her that things don't have to stay broken. Marcus didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was softer. All right, I hear you. Just be smart about it, okay? I will. And call me if you need anything. I will, Ethan said again, knowing he wouldn't. He hung up and turned the phone off once more. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch again, curled into a ball with Howard tucked under her chin. Ethan grabbed the blanket and covered her, then sat down at the desk and stared at nothing for a long time. His brother was right about one thing. This was going to take money, more than he had, more than he could make in 6 months of regular work. Parts for a Shelby weren't sitting on shelves at AutoZone. They were rare, expensive, and hard to source. He'd need specialists, metal fabricators, paint experts, people who knew the difference between authentic restoration and expensive guesswork. He pulled out a notebook and started making a list. Engine rebuild, suspension, brakes, interior, paint. Every line item felt like another $1,000 he didn't have. By the time he finished, the total came out somewhere north of $70,000. He stared at the number, then closed the notebook. His phone buzzed on the desk. Still off. Still phantom vibrations. He turned it back on one more time. The messages had slowed, but there were still new ones coming in. Most of them were strangers. A few were reporters. One was from Victoria Bennett. He opened hers. Ethan, this is Victoria. I don't give out my number often, but I wanted to reach out personally. What you found is significant, not just monetarily, but historically. If you're serious about restoring it, I can connect you with people who will do it right. No pressure, just wanted you to know the offer stands. VB. Below the message was a phone number. Ethan saved it, but didn't reply. Instead, he opened his email and found the contact list Victoria had mentioned at the showcase. She'd already sent it. 20 names, all specialists, all with notes about their expertise. Frame restoration, engine work, upholstery, paint matching. He read through the list twice, memorizing names, trying to figure out who he could afford and who was out of reach. Then he saw the last name on the list. Scarlett Vaughn, Vaughn Motors. Note, she asked to be included, said she wants to help however she can. Take that for what it's worth. VP. Ethan stared at the name for a long time. Then he closed the email and shut the laptop. The next morning, the garage phone rang at 7:30. Ethan had just finished making coffee. Burnt again, because the machine was older than Lily and twice as temperamental. He picked up the receiver, expecting a customer. Cole's Garage. Mr. Cole? The voice was professional, clipped. This is Janet Murrow from the LA Times. I'm working on a feature about your discovery, And I was hoping. He hung up. The phone rang again. He unplugged it. Lily wandered out of the office, still half asleep, Howard dragging behind her. Who was that? Nobody important. Can we have pancakes? We don't have pancake mix. Can we get some? Later, eat a granola bar. She made a face but didn't argue. They ate breakfast in silence, granola bars, orange juice from concentrate, the kind of meal that worked but didn't feel good. Afterward, Ethan drove Lily to school in the truck, the Cobra still sitting in the garage under its tarp. Are kids going to ask me about the car? Lily asked as they pulled up to the drop-off lane. Probably. What should I say? Tell them the truth. Your dad found a car. You helped. What if they don't believe me? Then they don't believe you. That's their problem, not yours. She nodded, unbuckled her seatbelt, and grabbed her backpack. Before she got out, she turned back. Dad? Yeah? I'm glad we didn't let them take it. Me too, kiddo. She climbed out, shut the door, and disappeared into the crowd of other kids streaming toward the building. Ethan sat there for a moment, watching her go, feeling the specific loneliness that comes with being a parent, the knowledge that no matter how much you try to protect them, the world's going to get in eventually. He drove back to the garage, parked, and stood in front of the Cobra for a long time. Then he pulled the tarp off completely. The rust looked worse in full daylight. Surface corrosion covered every panel, deep enough in places that the metal had started to flake. The frame was solid, but the body was a mess. Ethan ran his hand along the wheel well, feeling the rough texture, the years of neglect baked into every inch. This wasn't going to be a quick job. This wasn't going to be easy. And it sure as hell wasn't going to be cheap. But it was his. And that meant something. He spent the rest of the morning doing inventory. Every bolt, every bracket, every piece of the car that was still there. He took photos, measurements, notes. By noon, he had a better sense of what he was working with. The frame, solid. The suspension, salvageable. The engine, missing. The interior, gone. The body panels, 50-50. He'd need almost everything. His phone rang. He'd turned it back on out of habit, and now he regretted it. The number was local but unfamiliar. He answered, Yeah? Mr. Cole, this is Raymond Park from Classic Auto Restorations. I specialize in vintage American muscle, and I heard about your Shelby. I'd love to discuss a partnership. Not interested. I understand you're getting a lot of calls, but if you'd just... Ethan hung up. The phone rang again, different number. He turned it off and threw it in a drawer. For the next 3 hours, he worked in silence, cleaning the frame, removing loose rust, cataloging damage. The kind of work that didn't require thought, just repetition. It felt good, familiar, like the world made sense again as long as he kept his hands busy. At 2:30, someone knocked on the bay door. Ethan looked up. A man stood in the doorway, mid-50s, gray hair, expensive watch, polo shirt tucked into khakis. He had the look of someone who played golf on weekdays and owned a boat he only used twice a year. Help you? Ethan said. Ethan Cole? Depends who's asking. The man smiled, smooth, practiced. My name's Richard Calloway. I'm a private collector. I wanted to talk to you about your Cobra. It's not for sale. I haven't made an offer yet. Doesn't matter. Not for sale. Richard stepped inside anyway, hands in his pockets, looking around the garage like he was inspecting it. This is a nice setup you've got here. Independent shop? Yeah. How long you been doing this? Long enough. Richard's smile didn't waver. I'm going to be direct with you, Ethan. I've been collecting cars for 20 years. I own 11 Shelbys. I know the market, and I know what you're sitting on. Then you know I'm not selling. I'm prepared to offer you $1.2 million, cash, today. Ethan stopped working. He looked at Richard. Cash today. That's right. For a car that's not restored, not running, barely has a body. For the frame and the provenance, yes. Ethan set down the wrench he'd been holding. Let me ask you something. Of course. If I sell you this car, what happens to it? Richard shrugged. I'll have it restored by professionals, display it in my collection, maybe bring it to a few shows. And then? And then I own a piece of history. Right. Ethan picked the wrench back up. Not interested. Ethan, you heard me. Richard's smile finally cracked. You're making a mistake. You think you can restore this yourself? You think you have the resources, the expertise, the connections to do this right? I'll figure it out. You'll ruin it, and then it won't be worth anything. Then I'll ruin it. Richard stared at him for a long moment. Then he pulled a business card from his wallet and set it on the workbench. When you change your mind, call me. I won't. Everyone changes their mind. He left without another word. Ethan looked at the business card, then threw it in the trash. The rest of the day passed in a blur. More phone calls. More visitors. A woman from a vintage car magazine. A guy claiming to be a documentary filmmaker. Someone who said they were a lawyer representing a potential buyer and refused to leave until Ethan threatened to call the cops. By the time he picked Lily up from school, he was exhausted. How was your day, he asked as she climbed into the truck. Everyone asked about the car. What'd you tell them? That it's treasure and that you're fixing it. Good answer. Tommy Jenkins said his dad said you should sell it. Tommy Jenkins' dad can mind his own business, Lily giggled. That's what I said. They stopped for groceries on the way home. Real groceries this time. Pancake mix, eggs, milk, vegetables that Lily wouldn't eat, but Ethan felt obligated to buy anyway. At the register, the cashier recognized him. Hey, you're the guy with the car, right? Ethan nodded. That's so cool, man. Seriously. Good for you. Thanks. You gonna sell it? No. Smart, hold on to it. That thing's gonna be worth even more in a few years. Ethan paid, grabbed the bags, and left before the conversation could continue. Back at the apartment, he made actual dinner for the first time in a week. Spaghetti, garlic bread, a salad Lily picked at, but mostly ignored. They ate in front of the TV, watching a nature documentary about penguins that Lily had seen 3 times already, but still laughed at. Dad? She said during a commercial break. Yeah? Do you think Mom would have liked the car? The question came out of nowhere, the way Lily's questions often did. Ethan set down his fork. Yeah, I think she would have. Why? Because she liked things that had stories, and this car has a big one. Lily thought about this. Do you miss her? Every day? Me too. They finished dinner in silence. Afterward, Ethan did the dishes while Lily worked on homework at the kitchen table, spelling words, simple math problems, a worksheet about the water cycle. Normal kid stuff. The kind of thing that reminded him the world hadn't actually changed just because a car turned out to be valuable. At 8:30, he put Lily to bed. She insisted on bringing Howard into bed with her, even though the stuffed horse was falling apart and probably needed to be retired. Can you tell me a story? She asked. What kind? The kind where things get better. Ethan sat on the edge of her bed, trying to think of something. Finally, he said, once there was a car that everybody thought was junk, but one person saw what it really was. And even though it took a long time and a lot of work, eventually the car got fixed, and it was beautiful. Is that our car? Maybe. Does it have a happy ending? We'll find out. She smiled, closed her eyes, and was asleep within minutes. Ethan stayed there for a while, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of everything settle onto him again. The money he didn't have, the work he didn't know how to do, the people who wanted to buy the car, invest in the car, take the car, profit from the car. None of them cared about the car. They cared about what it represented. Status, wealth, a story they could tell at parties. But for Ethan, the car was something else. It was proof that value existed even when nobody recognized it. That things could be worth saving even when the world said otherwise. He turned off the light and went back to the living room. His phone was on the coffee table, screen dark. He turned it on one more time. 216 messages now. He scrolled through them quickly. Most were garbage. A few were genuine. One was from Scarlett Vaughn. He opened it. Ethan, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I meant what I said at the showcase. If there's anything I can do to help with the restoration, please let me know. I owe you that much. Scarlett. He stared at the message for a long time. Then he put the phone down without replying. Outside, the city hummed. Traffic, sirens. The sound of a world that didn't care about rusted cars or single dads or little girls who believed in treasure. But somewhere in a garage across town, a Cobra sat waiting. And Ethan was going to fix it. Not because it was worth $3 million, because it was worth fixing. The viral wave lasted 9 days. 9 days of constant phone calls, unsolicited offers, reporters showing up at the garage unannounced. 9 days of strangers recognizing Ethan at the grocery store, at the gas station, at Lily's school pickup line. 9 days of people acting like they knew him, like they'd been there from the beginning, like his success was somehow theirs too. On the 10th day, something else happened in the news. A minor celebrity got caught in a scandal, some political figure said something stupid. And just like that, the attention shifted. The calls slowed, the emails trickled off. The world moved on to the next thing. Ethan had never been more relieved in his life. He spent that morning the way he spent most mornings now, under the Cobra, hands covered in rust and grease, trying to assess damage he couldn't afford to fix yet. The frame was solid, he'd confirmed that much. But the more he dug into the car, the more problems he found. Corrosion in the suspension mounts, stress fractures in the body panels, electrical components that had rotted away decades ago. Every discovery felt like another line item on an invoice he couldn't pay. His phone sat on the workbench, silent for the first time in over a week. Ethan had finally changed his number 2 days ago after a collector from Dubai called at 3 a.m. offering $2 million cash, no questions asked. The only people who had the new number were Marcus, Lily's school, and Ricky. He was about to slide back under the frame when the bay door rattled. Someone knocking. Ethan froze. He'd put a sign on the door, closed for private work. No soliciting. Most people respected it. Most people. The knock came again, more insistent this time. "We're closed," Ethan called out. "I can see that." The voice was female, familiar. "But I was hoping you'd make an exception." Ethan slid out from under the car and looked toward the door. Scarlett Vaughn stood in the entrance, wearing jeans and a plain white shirt instead of the designer suits he'd seen her in before. Her hair was down, no makeup, and she looked tired. Not exhausted, just human. "What do you want?" Ethan asked. "To apologize. Properly this time." "You already did that." "I apologized to your daughter. I never apologized to you." Ethan stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. "You don't owe me anything." "I think we both know that's not true." Scarlett stepped inside, hands in her pockets, looking around the garage. Her eyes landed on the Cobra. "Can I see it? Without the tarp?" "You saw it at the showcase." "I saw rust and made assumptions. I'd like to actually look at it now." Ethan considered telling her to leave, considered pointing out that she'd humiliated him and his daughter in front of 100 people and millions more online. Considered asking why she thought she had any right to walk in here and ask for favors. Instead, he said, "Fine, but don't touch anything." Scarlett approached the Cobra slowly, like it might bite her. She crouched down near the front wheel well, studying the frame, the corrosion, the skeletal remains of what had once been a masterpiece. "I can't believe I almost had this towed to a scrapyard," she said quietly. "Yeah, you and everyone else at that auction." "That's not what I mean." She stood up, turned to face him. "I mean, I can't believe I was that blind, that arrogant. You weren't the only one who missed it, but I was the only one who tried to destroy it." She crossed her arms, looking uncomfortable. "I've been thinking about what you said, about needing a price tag before showing respect. You were right. Doesn't change anything. I know, but I wanted you to know I heard you." She paused. "I also wanted to make you an offer." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I told you, it's not for sale. Not that kind of offer." Scarlett pulled a folded piece of paper from her back pocket and handed it to him. "This is a list of contacts, restoration specialists, parts suppliers, metal fabricators, people I've worked with over the years. The best in the business." Ethan unfolded the paper. 20 names, each with a phone number and a brief note about their expertise. Some of the names matched Victoria's list. Some didn't. "Why?" he asked. "Because I owe you. And because I want to see this car finished." "You mean you want to be associated with it when it's done?" Scarlett flinched. "That's fair. And honestly, yeah, part of me does. But that's not the only reason." She gestured toward the Cobra. "This car deserves better than what I tried to do to it. And you deserve better than what I said about you. So if I can help, even a little, I want to." Ethan looked at the list again. Then at Scarlett. "These people don't work for free. I know. I can't afford them. I know that too. She took a breath. That's why I'm also offering to cover the restoration costs. Parts, labor, everything. No strings attached. The garage went silent. Ethan stared at her. You're joking. I'm not. Why the hell would you do that? Because I can, and because it's the right thing to do. The right thing would have been not treating me like garbage in the first place. Scarlett's face tightened, but she didn't argue. You're right, but I can't take that back. All I can do is try to make it right now. Ethan set the list down on the workbench. I don't want your money. Why not? Because then it's not my car anymore. It's yours. That's not how this works. That's exactly how it works. Ethan's voice was harder now. You throw money at the problem, you get to feel good about yourself, and I get to spend the rest of my life knowing I didn't actually earn this, that I needed someone to bail me out. This isn't about pride, Ethan. Yes, it is. That's exactly what it is. He picked up the list and held it out to her. I appreciate the gesture, I do. But I'm doing this myself. Scarlett didn't take the list. You're going to burn through your savings in 3 months. You'll take out loans you can't pay back. You'll work yourself into the ground trying to afford parts that cost more than most people make in a year. And for what? To prove a point? To prove it matters. Prove what matters? The work, the effort. The fact that I found this car and I'm going to fix it because it's mine. He set the list down again. You don't get that, do you? You've never had to fight for something nobody else believed in. You've never had to prove value when everyone around you said it didn't exist. Scarlett's expression shifted, not anger, something closer to hurt. You're right. I don't get it. I grew up with money. I inherited a company. I've never had to struggle the way you have. But that doesn't mean I can't see what you're doing here. And it doesn't mean I can't want to help. I don't need your help. Everyone needs help sometimes, Ethan. Not from you. The words came out sharper than he intended. Scarlett stepped back like she'd been slapped. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Scarlett nodded slowly. Okay, I understand. She turned toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you're wrong. I think refusing help because you're afraid of what it means says more about your pride than mine. But it's your car, your decision. She left without waiting for a response. Ethan stood there alone, staring at the list she'd left behind, feeling the weight of his own stubbornness settle into his chest like concrete. That night, Lily asked him about money. They were eating dinner, mac and cheese from a box, the cheap kind that came with powdered cheese and too much sodium. Lily had been quiet all through the meal, pushing noodles around her plate, and Ethan knew something was coming. Dad? Yeah? Are we poor? The question hit him like a gut punch. Why would you ask that? Tommy Jenkins said we must be poor if you're fixing the car yourself instead of paying someone. Ethan set down his fork. Tommy Jenkins doesn't know what he's talking about. But are we? He thought about lying, thought about telling her everything was fine, that money wasn't an issue, that they had everything they needed. But Lily was 7, not stupid. She knew when things were tight. She knew when he skipped meals to make sure she had enough. She knew when the heat didn't work and he told her it was fine to wear a sweater to bed. We're not rich, he said finally, but we're doing okay. Is the car expensive to fix? Yeah, it is. Are you worried about it? Ethan looked at his daughter, at those wide brown eyes that saw too much, understood too much. A little. Do you wish you never bought it? No? Why not? Because it's worth fixing, even if it's hard. Lily thought about this. Is that why you won't let the lady help? Ethan paused. What lady? The one from the car show. Tommy's mom said she saw it on Facebook. She said the lady offered to pay for the car, but you said no. Of course it was already online. Of course people were talking about it. Yeah, Ethan said. I said no. Why? Because if she pays for it, it's not really ours anymore. But it would still be our car. It would be her money. Lily frowned. I don't get it. I know, kiddo, it's complicated. Do you not like her? Ethan sighed. It's not about liking her. It's about doing things the right way. What's the right way? I don't know yet. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. But we'll figure it out, okay? Okay? They finished dinner in silence. Afterward, Ethan did the dishes while Lily worked on a drawing at the kitchen table. The cobra again, this time with both of them standing beside it. Later, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat on the couch with his laptop and pulled up the restoration cost estimate he'd been avoiding for days. Parts, $42,000. Labor, $35,000 if he did most of the work himself, closer to $60,000 if he hired help. Paint and finishing, $12,000. Miscellaneous, another $10,000 for things he hadn't thought of yet. Total, somewhere between $90,000 and $120,000. He had $8,000 in savings, maybe another $2,000 in checking. He could liquidate the small retirement account Sarah had left behind, but that would only give him another $15,000, and the tax penalty would eat half of it. Even if he maxed out every credit card he had, took out loans against the truck and the garage equipment, he'd still come up $40,000 short. Minimum. The math didn't work. No matter how he arranged the numbers, they didn't work. Ethan closed the laptop and sat there in the dark, feeling the walls close in. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text from Marcus. "You okay?" "Haven't heard from you in a few days," Ethan typed back. "Fine. Just busy." "With the car?" "Yeah. How's it going?" Ethan stared at the screen. Expensive. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "You thought about Scarlett's offer?" "Not interested." "Why not? She's offering to cover everything. No strings. There's always strings." "Not if you don't let there be." Ethan didn't respond. A minute later, another text came through. "You're being stubborn." "Yeah, probably. Sarah would tell you to take the help." Ethan's chest tightened. He typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally settling on, "Sarah's not here." Marcus didn't reply after that. Ethan set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that made you think too much, remember too much. Sarah had died 3 months after Lily turned 2. Cancer. Fast and cruel and completely unfair. They'd caught it late. Too late. And by the time the doctors started talking about treatment options, they were really talking about buying time. She'd lasted 6 months. 6 months of hospitals and radiation and watching her shrink into someone he barely recognized. 6 months of pretending everything would be okay while they both knew it wouldn't. The medical bills had buried him. Even with insurance, even with fundraisers organized by friends and family, the debt had been crushing. He'd spent the last 5 years clawing his way out of it, paying off collections agencies and creditors who didn't care that his wife was dead and his daughter needed shoes. He'd done it himself. No help, no handouts. Just work and time and refusing to quit. And now here he was again, staring at numbers that didn't add up, staring at a goal he couldn't reach alone. The difference was, this time someone was offering help, and he didn't know if that made it easier or harder. The next morning, Ethan called Victoria Bennett. She picked up on the second ring. "Ethan, I was wondering when I'd hear from you." "I need advice." "About the restoration?" "About money." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "How bad is it?" "Bad. I've got the car, I've got the skills, I don't have the cash." "Have you looked into loans?" "I won't qualify, not for the amount I need." "Investors." "Not interested in giving up ownership." "Then you're in a tough spot." "Yeah, I know." Ethan paused. "Scarlett Vaughn offered to cover the costs." "I heard." "What did you tell her?" "No." "Why?" "Because it felt wrong." Victoria laughed, short and dry. "You've got principles. I respect that. But principles don't buy engine blocks." "I know." "So what did you want from me? Permission to take her money?" "I want you to tell me if I'm being an idiot." Victoria was quiet again. Then she said, "You want the truth?" "Yeah." "You're not being an idiot, but you're not being smart either." She sighed. "Look, Ethan, I've been in this business a long time. I've seen a lot of guys like you, talented, stubborn, too proud to ask for help even when they need it. And you know what happens to most of them?" "What?" "They fail. Not because they're not good enough, but because they run out of money before they run out of work." She paused. "You found something incredible, something historically significant. If you restore it right, it'll outlive both of us. But if you try to do it on a shoestring budget and cut corners because you can't afford not to, you'll ruin it, and that would be a bigger tragedy than swallowing your pride. Ethan didn't respond. I'm not saying take Scarlett's money, Victoria continued. I'm saying think about what's more important, your ego or the car. It's not about ego. Then what's it about? It's about proving I can do this, that I don't need someone to swoop in and save me. To who? Scarlett? The world? Yourself? I don't know. Figure it out, Victoria said, because if you can't answer that question, you're doing this for the wrong reasons. She hung up before Ethan could respond. He sat in the garage for a long time after that, staring at the Cobra, thinking about everything Victoria had said. Thinking about Sarah, about Lily, about the difference between pride and principle. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found Scarlett's number. He'd saved it weeks ago, back when she first sent the message he'd ignored. His thumb hovered over the call button. He didn't press it. Instead, he put the phone away and got back to work. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan tried to make the numbers work on his own. He called in favors from suppliers he'd worked with over the years. He scoured online marketplaces for used parts. He reached out to smaller restoration shops, asking if they'd be willing to work on trade or deferred payment. Most said no. The ones who said yes quoted prices that were only marginally better than the professionals. He was $15,000 into the project now, frame cleaning, rust treatment, some basic metal work, and he was already running low on funds. At this rate, he'd be broke by the end of the month. Lily noticed. She didn't say anything, but he could see it in the way she looked at him, the way she stopped asking for things, the way she ate her dinner without complaining even when it was the same meal 3 nights in a row. She was trying to help, and it was killing him. One night, after she'd gone to bed, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with a beer he didn't finish and Scarlett's business card in front of him. He'd pulled it out of the trash weeks ago, smoothed out the wrinkles, and kept it in his wallet ever since. He stared at it for 20 minutes. Then he picked up his phone and called. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? It's Ethan Cole. A pause. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. Yeah, well, here I am. Is everything okay? No, not really. He took a breath. I need to ask you something. Okay? Your offer, the one to cover restoration costs, is it still on the table? Silence. Then quietly, yes. Why? And don't give me the PR answer. I want the real reason. Scarlett was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer. Because I don't like who I was that day, and I don't like that your daughter saw it. I can't take back what I said or how I acted, but I can help you fix something beautiful, and maybe that's enough. Ethan closed his eyes. If I do this, if I take your money, I need you to understand something. What? This is still my car, my project. You don't get to make decisions about the restoration. You don't get to tell me how to do it or when to finish it. You're funding it, not owning it. I understand. And if it turns out you're doing this to attach your name to the car, to use it for publicity or branding or whatever, the deal's off. I'll pay you back every cent, even if it takes me the rest of my life. Ethan, I mean it. I know you do. She paused. And I accept those terms. Ethan opened his eyes, stared at the card. Okay? Okay? Yeah, I'll take your help. He could hear the relief in her voice. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't make me regret this. I won't. They worked out the details over the next few days. Scarlett set up an account specifically for the restoration. Ethan would submit invoices and receipts, and she'd cover the costs directly. No money changed hands between them. No contracts. Just an agreement. It felt wrong at first, like admitting defeat, like proving everyone right who said he couldn't do it alone. But then Lily came home from school one afternoon and saw Ethan working on the Cobra with new parts, real parts, quality parts, and her face lit up in a way he hadn't seen in weeks. You got the new stuff, she said, running over to look. Yeah, someone's helping us out. The lady from the car show. Yeah. Lily looked up at him. Does that mean you're friends now? I don't know, kiddo. Maybe. I think you should be. She seems nice. Ethan smiled despite himself. She's trying. That's what you always tell me, that trying counts. Yeah, I guess I do say that. Lily went back to her homework, and Ethan went back to work, and for the first time in weeks, the project felt possible again. Not easy, but possible. And maybe that was enough. The first invoice Ethan submitted was for $6,000. Metal fabrication work on 2 body panels that were too corroded to save. He sent it through the online portal Scarlett had set up, half expecting her to question the cost or ask for a second opinion. She approved it within an hour. No questions, no comments, just a confirmation email that said the payment had been processed. It felt strange, too easy, like there was a catch he wasn't seeing yet. But the money hit the fabricator's account 2 days later, and the panels arrived the following week, and slowly Ethan started to believe this might actually work. The restoration took shape in pieces. Not smoothly, not according to any plan he could have outlined beforehand, but it moved forward, and that was something. He started with the frame, stripping away decades of corrosion, treating the metal, reinforcing stress points. The work was methodical, repetitive, the kind of thing that required patience more than skill. Lily helped when she could, sitting on the garage floor with Howard, handing Ethan tools, asking questions he didn't always know how to answer. "Why's this part rusty, but that part's not?" she asked one Saturday morning. "Because this part was exposed to water. That part wasn't." "How do you know?" "Experience and guessing." "Is guessing part of fixing cars?" "More than people think." She seemed satisfied with that. She went back to her drawing, a new one this time, showing the Cobra with an engine inside it. She'd colored the engine bright red, even though Ethan had told her engines were usually gray or black. "It's prettier this way," she'd said, and he couldn't argue with that. By the end of the first month, Ethan had submitted 4 more invoices. Suspension components, brake system parts, electrical wiring harnesses that cost more per foot than he made per hour. Each time, Scarlett approved them without hesitation. She didn't visit the garage, didn't call to check progress, didn't ask for updates or photos or any of the things Ethan had assumed she'd demand. She just stayed out of the way. It bothered him more than it should have. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan texted her, "Why aren't you asking about the car?" Her response came 5 minutes later. "You said you didn't want me involved. I'm respecting that. I didn't say you couldn't ask questions. Do you want me to ask questions?" Ethan stared at his phone, trying to figure out what he wanted. Finally, he typed, "I don't know. That's honest, at least." He almost left it there, almost put the phone down and went back to the invoice he was filling out. But something made him keep typing. "It's going well, slower than I'd like, but well. Good, I'm glad. I'll send you photos if you want." There was a longer pause this time. Then, "I'd like that." Ethan took a few pictures of the frame, cleaned, treated, starting to look like something whole again instead of something abandoned. He sent them without commentary. Scarlett's response was almost immediate. "It's beautiful. It's a frame. It's more than that. You can see the bones of what it's going to be." Ethan smiled despite himself. "Yeah, I guess you can." They started texting more after that. Not often, not daily, but enough that it stopped feeling weird. She'd ask how the work was going. He'd send progress photos. Sometimes she'd share articles about other Shelby restorations, or links to parts suppliers he hadn't heard of, or just random thoughts about cars she'd seen that day. It wasn't friendship exactly, but it wasn't nothing either. The second month was harder. The engine arrived, a correct spec 427 side oiler block that Ethan had sourced through one of Victoria's contacts. It was beautiful. It was also incomplete, needing a full rebuild before it could even be test-fired. Ethan had rebuilt engines before, plenty of them, but never one like this. Never one where every part had to be period correct, where every tolerance had to be exact, where a single mistake could cost thousands of dollars and weeks of work. He took his time, measured twice, cut once, checked and rechecked every specification against the original shop manual he'd bought for $200 from a collector in Ohio. Lily watched sometimes, sitting on her stool, legs swinging, asking questions that pulled him out of his own head. "What's that part do?" "It's a piston. It moves up and down inside the cylinder." "Why?" "Because explosions push it." "There's explosions in the car?" "Controlled explosions. That's how engines work." "That sounds dangerous." "It is if you do it wrong." "Are you doing it right?" Ethan looked at her. "I'm trying." That's what counts, she said, echoing his own words back at him. Then she went back to her drawing, and Ethan went back to the engine, feeling something tight in his chest loosen just a little. The rebuild took 3 weeks. When he finally had all the components assembled, cleaned, and ready for installation, he stood back and looked at it sitting on the engine stand and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Real pride. Not the defensive kind that came from proving people wrong, but the quiet kind that came from doing something difficult and doing it right. He sent Scarlett a photo. She called instead of texting. "Is that the engine?" she asked when he picked up. "Yeah." "It's incredible. When are you installing it?" "Next week. I need to finish the motor mounts first." "Can I come see it?" The question caught him off guard. "What?" "The garage, the car, the work you're doing. I'd like to see it in person, if that's okay." Ethan hesitated. Part of him wanted to say no, to keep this thing separate, protected, his. But another part, the part that had been texting her for weeks, sharing progress, slowly starting to trust that maybe she actually cared about this for the right reasons, wanted to say yes. "Yeah," he said finally. "You can come. When's good for you?" "Saturday afternoon. Lily'll be there, though." "That's fine. I'd like to see her again anyway." They hung up, and Ethan stood there in the garage, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. Saturday came too fast. Ethan spent the morning cleaning the garage, sweeping the floor, organizing tools, moving the parts he wasn't using into some semblance of order. He told himself he wasn't nervous, told himself it didn't matter what Scarlett thought of his workspace or his methods or the progress he'd made. He was lying. Lily sensed something was up. "Why are you cleaning?" she asked, watching him from her stool. "Because it's a mess." "It's always a mess." "Yeah, well, not today. Is someone coming?" "The lady from the car show, Scarlett." Lily's eyes widened. "Really?" "Yeah, she wants to see how the car's coming along." "Are you nervous?" "No." "You're cleaning. You're always nervous when you clean." Ethan stopped sweeping and looked at his daughter. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart." "You just don't notice." He laughed despite himself. "Fair enough." Scarlett arrived at 2:30, driving a Tesla that looked like it cost more than Ethan's entire garage. She parked in the lot, climbed out, and stood there for a moment, looking at the building like she was trying to decide if she'd made a mistake. Then she saw Ethan standing in the bay door and waved. He waved back. She was wearing jeans again and a light jacket, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked more like a person and less like a CEO, and somehow that made Ethan more nervous, not less. "Hey," she said when she reached him. "Hey. Thanks for letting me come." "Yeah, sure." He stepped aside. "Come on in." Scarlett walked into the garage slowly, her eyes moving over everything. The tools, the parts, the Cobra sitting in the center bay with its frame fully restored and the engine waiting on the stand beside it. She didn't say anything for a long moment, just looked. Then Lily's voice cut through the silence. "Hi." Scarlett turned. Lily was standing near the back wall, Howard tucked under one arm, a shy smile on her face. "Hi, Lily," Scarlett said. "How are you?" "Good, I'm helping." "I can see that. What are you working on?" Lily held up her drawing, the latest one, showing the Cobra with flames painted on the side and both her and Ethan standing beside it. "That's beautiful," Scarlett said, and she sounded like she meant it. "Dad says the car won't have flames, but I think it should." "I think you might be right." Lily beamed. Then she went back to her drawing, and Scarlett turned her attention back to the car. "Can I get closer?" she asked Ethan. "Yeah, just don't touch the engine. The parts are all balanced." She approached the Cobra carefully, circling it the way someone might circle a sculpture in a museum. She crouched near the rear wheel well, studying the metalwork, stood up and looked at the frame reinforcements, leaned in to examine the restored suspension mounts. "You did all this yourself?" she asked. "Most of it. I had help with the fabrication." "It's amazing. It's not done yet." "I know. But it's still amazing." She straightened up, looking at him. "I mean it, Ethan. This is beautiful work." He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Scarlett walked over to the engine stand. "And this is the 427? "Yeah, side oiler, period correct block." "Is it ready to go in?" "Almost. I'm waiting on a few more parts. Should have it installed by the end of the month." "And then what?" transmission, exhaust, cooling system. Then we start on the body panels and paint. He paused. It's going to take a while. Good things usually do. They stood there in silence for a moment, both looking at the engine, at the car, at the work that was still ahead. Then Scarlett said, I owe you an apology. Ethan looked at her. You already apologized. Not for that. For assuming you couldn't do this. When you turned down my help the first time, I thought you were being stubborn. Foolish. I thought you'd fail and come crawling back within a month. She met his eyes. I was wrong. You're not failing. You're building something real, and I should have trusted that from the beginning. Ethan didn't know what to say. He settled for, thanks. I mean it. This car's lucky to have you. I think it's the other way around. Scarlett smiled. Maybe it's both. She stayed for another hour. She didn't ask intrusive questions or try to give advice or do any of the things Ethan had been afraid she'd do. She just watched him work, asked Lily about her drawings, and seemed genuinely interested in the process. When she finally left, Lily walked her to the car. Are you going to come back? Lily asked. Do you want me to? Yeah, I think Dad likes when you're here, even if he doesn't say it. Scarlett laughed. I like being here too. Do you have kids? No, I don't. Why not? I've been too busy working, I guess. Lily thought about this. You should get some. They're fun. I'll keep that in mind. After Scarlett left, Ethan asked Lily what they'd talked about. Stuff, Lily said. What kind of stuff? Kid stuff. She asked if you were happy. What'd you tell her? That you're happier when you're working on the car. That's true. She said she was glad, and that she's sorry she was mean before. She told you that? Yeah, I told her it's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. Ethan pulled Lily into a hug. You're too smart for your own good, you know that? I know, she said, her voice muffled against his shirt. The work continued. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The engine went in, then the transmission, then the exhaust system, custom built by a specialist in Arizona who'd worked on Shelbys before and knew exactly what he was doing. Every invoice Ethan submitted, Scarlett approved. Every progress photo he sent, she responded to with genuine enthusiasm. She visited the garage twice more, once to see the engine installed, once to see the first body panel test fitted. Each time, she and Lily talked more than she and Ethan did. And each time, Ethan noticed that Scarlett seemed more relaxed, more human, less like the person who'd tried to tow his car to a scrapyard. People changed. He was starting to believe that. By the 5th month, the Cobra was starting to look like a car again instead of a project. The frame was complete. The drivetrain was installed. The suspension was rebuilt. The electrical system was functional. What remained was the body and paint. The visible parts, the things that would determine whether this looked like a professional restoration or an expensive hobby. Ethan was nervous about this stage in a way he hadn't been about anything else. Mechanical work he understood. Paintwork was different. Paintwork was art, and art required a level of perfection he wasn't sure he could deliver. He called one of the specialists from Victoria's list, a guy named Don Chen who ran a shop in San Diego and had restored 3 Cobras over the past decade. How much do you know about automotive paint? Don asked during their first call. Enough to be dangerous. That's what I was afraid of. Look, I'm going to be straight with you. If you want this car to be show quality, you can't do the paint yourself. You'll screw it up. No offense. None taken. You need someone who knows what they're doing. Someone who's worked with original Shelby specs and understands how the paint should look versus how modern paint looks. That sounds expensive. It is, but it's the difference between a car worth $3 million and a car worth half that because the paint's wrong. Ethan thought about this. How much are we talking? For the full job? Bodywork, prep, paint, clear coat, wet sanding, buffing? Probably 30 grand. Jesus. I know, but that's the reality. You want me to send you a detailed quote? Yeah, please. The quote arrived 2 days later. $32,000, itemized down to the cost of sandpaper. Ethan stared at the number for a long time. Then he forwarded the quote to Scarlett with a message. This is what it's going to take to finish the body and paint. If this is too much, I understand. Her response came 10 minutes later. Approved. When can we schedule it? Ethan read the message 3 times. Then he called Dawn back. When can you start? He asked. How soon can you get the car to me? 2 weeks. I need to finish a few things first. Then 2 weeks it is. Ethan hung up and sat there in the garage, looking at the Cobra, feeling the weight of what was happening settle over him. This was real. This was actually happening. He was going to finish this car. The night before Ethan was supposed to transport the Cobra to San Diego, Scarlett called. Hey, she said. Are you busy? Just finishing up some paperwork. Why? I wanted to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Okay. Do you still resent me for how this started? Ethan paused. He'd been expecting a lot of questions, but not that one. I don't know, maybe a little. That's fair, but it's getting better. Why? Because you've been good to your word. You said you'd help, and you did. No strings, no ulterior motives, just help. I told you there wouldn't be strings. I know, but I didn't believe you. And now? Now I'm starting to. Scarlett was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Can I tell you something? Yeah. I was raised to see value in terms of money. If something cost a lot, it mattered. If it didn't, it was disposable. My father taught me that. The company's built on that. And I never questioned it until that day at the showcase. What changed? You did. And Lily, the way you looked at that car. Not like it was worth millions, but like it was worth saving. The way she defended it, even though everyone was telling her it was junk, it made me realize I'd been looking at everything wrong. Ethan didn't know what to say. I don't expect you to forgive me, Scarlett continued. I don't even know if I've forgiven myself. But I want you to know that helping you with this car is the best thing I've done in years. Maybe ever. Scarlett, I'm not looking for thanks. I just wanted you to know. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ethan said, For what it's worth, I think you're a better person than you give yourself credit for. You barely know me. I know you've been showing up. That counts for something. Does it? Yeah, it does. After they hung up, Ethan sat in the dark garage thinking about second chances, about mistakes and apologies and the hard work of becoming someone different than who you were. He thought about Sarah, about how she'd always believed people could change if they wanted to badly enough. Maybe she'd been right. The next morning, Ethan loaded the Cobra onto a transport trailer bound for San Diego. Lily stood beside him, watching the car disappear into the back of the truck. Is it going to be okay? She asked. Yeah. Don's one of the best. He'll take good care of it. When will it come back? 3 months, maybe 4. That's a long time. I know, but it'll be worth it. Lily nodded, then reached up and took his hand. Dad? Yeah, kiddo? I'm proud of you. Ethan's throat tightened. He squeezed her hand. I'm proud of you too. They stood there together, watching the truck pull away, carrying $3 million in restored metal and a whole lot of hope. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to work out. The 3 months without the Cobra felt longer than the 6 months before it. Ethan filled the time with regular work, oil changes, brake jobs, the kind of routine maintenance that paid bills but didn't require much thought. The garage felt empty without the Cobra sitting in the center bay. Too quiet. Like something vital had been removed and the space hadn't figured out how to compensate yet. Lily felt it too. She still came to the garage after school, still sat on her stool with Howard, but now she just did homework or drew pictures of the car from memory instead of watching Ethan work on the real thing. Do you think it's going to look different when it comes back? She asked one afternoon. Yeah, a lot different. Good different or bad different? Good different. It'll actually look like a car instead of a project. Will you still work on it? A little. Final assembly, testing, breaking in the engine, but the hard part's done. Lily considered this. Are you going to miss it? The hard part? The question caught Ethan off guard. He set down the invoice he'd been reviewing and looked at his daughter. Yeah, I think I will. Why? Because the hard part's when you know you're building something. When it's easy, you're just maintaining it. Is that bad? No, it's just different. Dawn sent progress photos every 2 weeks. The body panels stripped down to bare metal. The first coat of primer. The base coat going on. The clear coat. Each image showed the Cobra transforming from a skeletal frame into something that looked like it had rolled off the factory floor in 1965. Ethan shared every photo with Scarlett. She responded to each one with the same enthusiasm she'd shown from the beginning, and slowly Ethan realized that at some point over the past few months, she'd stopped being the person who'd humiliated him and become something else. Not quite a friend, not quite a business partner, something in between that didn't have a name yet. She started visiting the garage even though the car wasn't there. Not often, maybe once every couple weeks, but enough that Lily started asking when Scarlett was coming next, and enough that Ethan stopped being surprised when her Tesla pulled into the lot. One Saturday, she showed up with coffee and pastries from a bakery Ethan had never been able to afford. "What's this for?" he asked when she handed him a cup. "No reason, just thought you might want something better than whatever you make in that machine." She nodded toward the ancient coffee maker sitting on the office desk. "That machine works fine." "That machine's older than I am." "And it still makes coffee," Scarlett smiled. "You're impossible to do nice things for, you know that?" "I've been told." They sat in the garage drinking coffee that actually tasted good, while Lily worked on a puzzle at the desk. It was comfortable in a way Ethan hadn't expected. Easy, like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. "Can I ask you something?" Scarlett said after a while. "Yeah." "What are you going to do with the car when it's done?" Ethan had been avoiding that question for months. "I don't know yet." "Are you going to sell it?" "No." "Keep it?" "Maybe. I haven't thought that far ahead." "You should, because once it's finished, people are going to ask. A lot." "I know. And?" Ethan looked at the empty bay where the Cobra used to sit. "And I'll figure it out when it gets here." Scarlett didn't push. She just nodded and went back to her coffee. 3 weeks before the car was scheduled to return, Victoria Bennett called. "Ethan, it's Victoria. You have a minute?" "Yeah, what's up?" "I've been talking to some people in the collector community. Word's gotten out that your Cobra's almost finished." "I figured it would." "There's interest. A lot of interest. I've had 4 separate collectors reach out asking if you'd consider selling." "Not interested." "I told them that, but I wanted you to hear the numbers anyway." "Victoria, just listen. The lowest offer is $2.8 million. The highest is $4.2. Ethan sat down on the creeper. $4 million. 4.2, and that's before anyone's actually seen it in person. Jesus. I know. So I need to ask you directly, are you sure you don't want to sell? Ethan thought about the number, about what $4 million would mean. No more debt, no more struggling to make rent. Lily's college paid for. A house with heat that actually worked. Security for the rest of their lives. But then he thought about the first time he'd seen the Cobra, the way Lily had cried when Scarlett tried to take it away. The months of work, the late nights, the small victories that had added up to something bigger than money. "I'm sure," he said. "Can I ask why?" "Because it's not about the money. It never was for you, was it?" "No." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You're a rare breed, Ethan. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." "I'm just stubborn." "It's more than that. But I won't argue with you." She paused. "There is one thing, though. The Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance is in 4 months. If you're not selling, you should consider showing the car. It deserves to be seen." "I don't know." "Think about it. That's all I'm asking." After they hung up, Ethan sat in the empty garage thinking about what it would mean to show the Cobra, to put it in front of judges and collectors and photographers, to make it public property in a way it had never been before. Part of him hated the idea, but another part, the part that had spent months restoring something beautiful, wanted people to see it, wanted them to understand what he'd built. He didn't make a decision. Not yet. The Cobra came back on a Tuesday afternoon in early October. Don drove it himself, trailing behind the transport truck in his own vehicle, unwilling to trust anyone else with the delivery. When the truck pulled into the garage lot, Ethan's hands were shaking. Lily had skipped school for this. She stood beside him, bouncing on her toes, Howard clutched tight. "Is that it?" she asked. "Is it really back?" "Yeah, kiddo, it's back." The transport driver lowered the ramp slowly. And then there it was. The Cobra rolled into view and Ethan's breath caught in his throat. It was perfect. Not metaphorically, not relatively. Actually, perfect. The paint was Guardsman blue, the original color, deep and rich and flawless. Chrome gleamed on the side pipes. The interior had been restored with cream leather that looked like it had never been touched. Every panel aligned perfectly. Every detail was exactly right. It looked like it had been frozen in time in 1965 and delivered straight to the present. Don climbed out of his truck, grinning. "What do you think?" Ethan couldn't speak. He just walked toward the car slowly, like approaching something sacred. Lily ran ahead, stopping just short of touching it. "Dad, it's so pretty." "Yeah," Ethan managed. "It really is." Don handed him the keys. Original-style fobs, polished and perfect. "She runs like a dream. I put about 50 miles on her during break-in. Engine solid, transmission shifts smooth. You did good work on the mechanical side. You did good work on everything else. We make a good team." Don clapped him on the shoulder. "Take her for a drive. You've earned it." Ethan looked at Lily. "You want to go for a ride?" Her eyes went huge. "Really? Really? Can Howard come?" "Howard can come." Ethan opened the passenger door. It moved on its hinges like silk, perfectly balanced, and helped Lily climb in. She sat there, Howard in her lap, looking around at the restored interior with something close to awe. He walked around to the driver's side, slid behind the wheel, and just sat there for a moment. The leather smelled new, but not wrong. The gauges were clear and precise. The steering wheel felt solid in his hands. He put the key in the ignition and turned it. The 427 roared to life, loud, aggressive, the kind of sound that made your chest vibrate. Lily squealed with delight. Don whooped from the parking lot. Ethan pressed the clutch, shifted into first, and pulled out of the garage slowly. The car handled like nothing he'd ever driven, responsive but not twitchy, powerful but not uncontrollable. It felt alive under him, like it had been waiting decades for someone to wake it up properly. He drove through the neighborhood, keeping it under 30, letting the engine warm up. Lily had her window down, her hair whipping in the wind, laughing every time Ethan touched the throttle. "This is the best day ever," she shouted over the engine noise. Ethan smiled. "Yeah, it might be." When they got back to the garage, Scarlett was there. She'd parked off to the side, standing next to her Tesla, and when she saw the Cobra pull in, her hand went to her mouth. Ethan parked, killed the engine, and climbed out. "Oh my God," Scarlett said, walking toward the car. "Ethan, I know. It's stunning." "Dawn did good work." "You both did." She circled the car slowly, the same way she had the first time she'd visited the garage, but this time with reverence instead of curiosity. "I can't believe this is the same car I tried to tow away. Technically, it's about 60% new parts." "You know what I mean." Lily climbed out of the passenger seat. "Hi, Scarlett." "Hi, Lily. What did you think of the ride?" "It was so fast and so loud. Those are the best kinds of rides." Scarlett crouched down near the front wheel well, looking at the panel gaps, the paint finish, the way everything came together. When she stood up, her eyes were wet. "Are you crying?" Ethan asked. "No." She wiped her face quickly. "Maybe. I don't know." She laughed, embarrassed. I keep thinking about that day at the showcase, about what I almost destroyed. And now look at it. You didn't destroy it. But I could have. If Victoria hadn't shown up, if you hadn't fought for it, this would be gone." She looked at him. "I owe you more than money, Ethan. I owe you for teaching me how to see things differently." "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do. But I'm working on being okay with that." Over the next few weeks, word spread fast. Photos of the finished Cobra appeared on car forums, collector blogs, social media. The story got picked up again, this time not as a viral moment, but as a restoration success. Articles ran in classic car magazines. YouTube channels requested interviews. Someone started a thread on a Shelby forum calling it one of the finest restorations of the decade. The offers started pouring in again. 5 million, 6 million. One collector offered 7 million sight unseen. Ethan turned them all down. Marcus called him one night, frustrated. "You're out of your mind. $7 million, Ethan. Do you know what that would mean for Lily's future?" "I know exactly what it would mean." "Then why won't you sell?" "Because some things aren't for sale. Everything's for sale at the right price." "Not this," Marcus sighed. You sound like Dad. Dad was stubborn. Dad died broke because he was stubborn. Dad died happy because he did things his way. Ethan paused. I'm doing this my way, too. Marcus didn't argue after that. He just said, All right, I hope you know what you're doing. Me too. 2 weeks later, Victoria called again. Have you thought about Pebble Beach? She asked. Yeah. And? I'll do it, but only if Lily can come. She can absolutely come. I'll make sure of it. And Scarlett? Victoria paused. Scarlett Vaughn? Yeah, she's part of this story. She should be there. That's generous of you. It's honest. The Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance took place on a Sunday in mid-August. The event was everything Ethan had expected. Wealthy collectors, immaculate cars, an atmosphere of refined prestige that made the Vaughn Motors showcase look casual by comparison. The Cobra sat on the 18th fairway of Pebble Beach golf links, positioned among other American muscle cars from the 60s and 70s. A small placard in front of it read, 1965 Shelby Cobra, 427S/C CSX 3015, restored by Ethan Cole. Lily stood beside the car in a dress Scarlett had bought for her, holding Howard, watching people walk past and stop to stare. She'd asked Ethan if she could be the one to tell people about the car, and he'd said yes. Now she was doing exactly that. My dad found it at an auction, she told a couple in their 60s. Everyone thought it was junk, but he knew it was treasure. How much did he pay for it? The woman asked. $120. You're kidding. Nope, he's really smart. The couple moved on, shaking their heads in amazement. Lily beamed. Scarlett stood off to the side, watching. She'd tried to stay out of photos, tried to remain in the background, but photographers kept finding her, kept asking about her connection to the car. Eventually, she'd stopped deflecting and just told the truth. I almost destroyed this car because I couldn't see past the rust. Ethan saved it, and he taught me something important in the process. What's that? A journalist asked. That value isn't always visible. Sometimes you have to trust that it's there even when everyone else says it's not. The quote showed up in 3 different articles the next day. Ethan spent most of the event talking to other restorers, collectors, and enthusiasts who wanted to know about the process. He answered their questions honestly, gave credit to Don and the other specialists who'd helped, and deflected every attempt to turn him into some kind of folk hero. I just did the work, he said over and over. That's all. But people didn't want to hear that. They wanted the story. The mechanic who found treasure, the single dad who bet everything on a rusted frame, the underdog who proved everyone wrong. Ethan let them have their story. It wasn't entirely accurate, but it wasn't entirely wrong either. Late in the afternoon, the judges made their rounds. They spent 20 minutes examining the Cobra, checking panel gaps, looking under the hood, reviewing documentation. They asked Ethan questions about originality, about part sourcing, about his decision to restore rather than sell. He answered everything truthfully. When they moved on to the next car, Victoria appeared beside him. How do you think it went? She asked. I have no idea. You looked confident. I wasn't. She smiled. Good. Confidence is overrated anyway. The awards ceremony happened at sunset. Lily sat on Ethan's shoulders so she could see over the crowd. Scarlett stood beside them, her hand resting lightly on Ethan's arm. They called out awards in categories. Best Restoration, Most Original, People's Choice. The Cobra didn't win any of them. Ethan wasn't disappointed. He'd expected that. The car wasn't here to win. It was here to exist. But then they announced a special award, the Chairman's Trophy, given to the car that best embodied the spirit of automotive preservation and passion. And they called CSX 3015. The crowd applauded. Lily screamed. Scarlett's hand tightened on Ethan's arm. He walked up to accept the trophy in a daze, Lily still on his shoulders, and stood there in front of hundreds of people holding a piece of crystal that probably cost more than his first car. Thank you, he said into the microphone they handed him. This car was forgotten for 40 years. A lot of people helped bring it back. I'm just glad it gets to be seen again. The crowd applauded again. He walked off the stage, set Lily down, and looked at the trophy. We won, Lily said, bouncing. We did. Does this mean we're famous? For about 10 minutes. That's long enough. That night, after the event, the 3 of them, Ethan, Lily, and Scarlett, sat on the beach watching the sun disappear into the Pacific. The Cobra was secured back at the hotel, covered and protected. But Ethan kept thinking about it anyway. "What are you going to do now?" Scarlett asked. "What do you mean?" "With the car. With everything." Ethan thought about it. "I'm going to drive it, take Lily to school in it sometimes, bring it to a few shows, let people see it."
You're not going to sell it.
"No. Even though you could retire on what it's worth." "Even though?" Scarlett looked out at the ocean. "I don't think I would have made that choice. A year ago, I definitely wouldn't have." "What about now?" "Now I think I'm starting to understand why you did." Lily had fallen asleep against Ethan's side, Howard tucked under her chin. Ethan stroked her hair gently. "Can I tell you something?" Scarlett said. "Yeah."
Helping you with this car, being part of this story, it's the first time in my life I've done something that mattered more than money. And I don't think I would have figured that out if you'd let me off the hook that first day. I was pretty angry that first day. You had every right to be. I'm not angry anymore. I know. That's what makes you better than me. Ethan looked at her. You're not a bad person, Scarlett. You just had bad priorities. Had? You're working on it. She smiled. I am. They sat there as the light faded, watching waves roll in, listening to Lily's soft breathing. Eventually, Scarlett said, I should probably get going. Yeah, probably. She stood up, brushed sand off her jeans. Thank you, Ethan, for letting me be part of this. Thank you for showing up, even after I gave you every reason not to. I'll always show up for you and Lily. You know that, right? Yeah, I do. She walked back toward the parking lot, and Ethan sat there with his daughter sleeping against him, thinking about everything that had happened over the past year. He'd found a car nobody wanted. He'd fought for it when everyone said to walk away. He'd accepted help when his pride told him not to. He'd built something beautiful with his own hands and the support of people who'd learned to believe in the same thing he did. The car was worth millions now. But that had never been the point. The point was showing Lily that value existed before anyone recognized it, that things were worth saving even when they looked broken, that the work mattered more than the outcome. He'd proven all of that, and somewhere along the way, he'd helped someone else learn it too. The drive home took 6 hours. Ethan had the Cobra transported professionally. He wasn't risking anything happening to it on the highway, but he and Lily flew back together the next morning. When they got home, the car was already in the garage, covered with the tarp, waiting. Lily ran to it immediately. Can we take it for a drive? Tomorrow. It's late. Please? Ethan looked at her hopeful face and caved. Fine, but just around the block. Yes. They drove through the neighborhood as the streetlights came on. Lily had her window down again, singing along to a song only she could hear. Ethan kept the speed low, the engine rumbling like distant thunder. When they got back to the garage, Lily said, Dad? Yeah? This was the best year ever. Ethan smiled. Yeah, kiddo, it really was. He parked the Cobra in the center bay, right where it belonged, and cut the engine. The garage fell silent, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full, complete, like something had been missing for a long time and finally found its way home. Ethan climbed out of the car, helped Lily out, and stood there looking at what they'd built together. Not just a car, but proof that broken things could be made whole, that value existed in unexpected places, that people could change if they wanted to badly enough. The world would keep spinning, offers would keep coming, people would keep asking why he didn't sell, and Ethan would keep saying no. Because some things weren't about money. Some things were about the work, about what you built with your hands and who you became in the process. He'd found a rusted Cobra in a forgotten barn and turned it into something beautiful. But more than that, he'd shown his daughter that treasure wasn't something you found. It was something you recognized. And once you saw it, really saw it, you did everything in your power to protect it, even when the whole world told you it was worthless, especially then.